very big welcome straight off the bat to Ronan O'Gara. Good morning to you.
Morning, how are you?
Good, how are you getting on?
Good, thank you. Yeah, the sun is shining, so it's been a while coming, so good weather hopefully, even though it's meant to be raining in Montpellier tomorrow, but things are good. Yeah, exciting time of year obviously, so the games keep coming, and we need a point out of tomorrow's game, point minimum obviously, to get a guaranteed home semi-final for it's not home semi-final, to go straight to a semi-final for the top 14, so loads at stake and exciting times.
And you've been saying for ages that's exactly where you need to be at this point of the season to get that week's breather. And just the point needed, is that I'm sure I know your answer to this, but in terms of your approach to the game and the general mindset, it's a very different approach from that, as you've well described previously, about that constant beat of needing to win week in, week out.
Yeah, well, it just becomes a different, I suppose, set of circumstances late in the game, in the fact where normally you go for a win, but you need to think bigger picture in this regard. We're 10 points clear of Stade Francais. We play them in the last game, so we have a lot in our favour. They need 5 points to catch us. But in terms of, I suppose, the immediate future, if you're 8 points down tomorrow, kicking a penalty is hugely important. So in France, the system works where it's 5 points or less, you get a bonus défensif, which means a bonus point for finishing within 5 of your opponents.
Can the weather forecast drastically change your tactical plans, Ronan? Like, say, for example, it's given certain weather, and then very, very late in the day, a couple of days before the match or a day before the match, you realise, it's actually going to piss down here. So do you have to change things at all?
Yeah, you would have to. It's the one sport I'm convinced that it has a huge impact on the game, the weather. I think for the amount of handling that's involved, it's obviously so much easier to handle a dry ball. So no matter how skilled you are, there's still an extra component of concentration and time required to catch pass at ease when it's lashing out of the heavens and there's wind involved with it too. Obviously, a wet ball is unpleasant compared to a dry ball, and it becomes more advantageous for the defensive, I suppose, points in the game.
We'd James Tracy in studio last week, Ronan, just after the Heineken Cup semi-finals, and obviously the conversation turned to your own victory and his thoughts on the La Rochelle setup ahead of the Leinster game. We have a short clip here. I think you've seen the longer clip, but here's the short clip for people who haven't seen it.
The last few La Rochelle games, they really pushed the boundaries on the breakdown. Okay, so how are you going to stop Leinster? At source, breakdown is seems to be kind of the narrative of how they go about it. So, we are kind of dependent a lot on having good officials, because if they get away with kind of not holding their body weight and just killing the ball, there's not much you can do really. And it's very frustrating when, yes, they give clean purchase on the ball, but a lot of times they're not on their feet and they just get rewarded for time after time. And they might get pinged once or twice, but then the momentum swings and they're getting rewarded for it. And
given how recent he was in that Leinster dressing room, it might be a good insight to the way they're thinking. What's your reaction to that, or your thoughts on it?
Well, that's interesting. I've never heard that. And is James Tracy part of the Leinster setup?
No,
or is he
retired in the last year and fully detached.
He retired in the last year. Okay, I thought he retired in the year. No.
Possibly, was certainly within the last year anyway.
Yeah, within this season. So
December, I think.
Part of their setup.
Yeah.
If they're a family and they are, if a guy gets injured, obviously he remains part of your setup till the end of that season, and then he'll be presented with something. Yeah, so it's interesting. Gives me straight from the team meeting to off the ball.
Potentially, it's possible.
Well, exactly. I'm just wondering, is it a plant on Leinster's behalf, or is this James Tracy as a new guy setting out on a new career? That's, I suppose, the first thing that strikes me, because in terms of the breakdown, he's he has an opinion on that, but stopping Leinster. But we could also, I suppose, turn it as like, how do you stop Leinster, but how do you stop La Rochelle? It depends how you frame the question, what you want out of it, how you see it. So it will become obviously a little bit spicy in the build up to the game. Certain camps put a huge emphasis on work behind the scenes with referees. But I think my 10 years has taught me to try and control the things we can control, put your energy into that, and the better team will win on the day.
His point about the to summarise basically what he's talking about is La Rochelle pushing the boundaries at the breakdown. He was talking about not holding on to players not holding on to their own body weight. He said pinged once or twice but get away a lot with it, and he went into detail about the hooker, which would have been his own position, breaking the 15 into open play before the line-out was technically over in whatever regard that it, whatever circumstance that would have been. That there's a pushing of the boundaries, I suppose, would be the overall point.
Yeah. Well, all good teams push the boundaries. There's no doubt about that. But I think what's different between the guys he would have trained with in the past and the guys that are in my camp would be, I suppose, the physical power. So, the first thing is that it's not easy to win collisions with or without the ball when you run into a Bugarit, an Aldred, a Botti and Antonio Skelton. So footwork from the ball carrier needs to be very important, and they need to be very good at that. Otherwise it becomes a mismatch because the more dominant player wins. So that'll be something we'll be looking at, and something we've been good at no matter who's reffing. So I think what good sides, great sides do is they put their energy into themselves. Everyone has a different viewpoint on it, and it's easy to go whinge to the referee and say that they're not controlling their body weight and stuff like that. So that's an interesting clip. Thank you.
I'll take that for the compliment in which spirit in which it was delivered. The point about pushing the boundaries is used as a sort of a euphemism, right, for like bending the rules slightly. And actually, when I saw the James Tracy clip last week, or the interview last week, the thing that jumped out for me was like that we'd been lauding the All Blacks for that type of thing for years. So like one team's infringement is another team's eking out a benefit within the game. What is there, like that sort of stuff that he's talking about, does that sound alien to you? You like, I don't know what he's talking about. Is that the sort of stuff that just crops up in the middle of games? Is that the sort of stuff that you can
over here I'm removed from the chit chat in the pubs and in the shops and on the street and in Dublin and its surrounding counties and provinces that watch and support Leinster. What's undeniable is that Leinster are very, very good. But a lot of teams have left them be very good, so the plan will be to play as much ball as we can, and then, as I said earlier, let the better team win. They have been very, very impressive, and we're playing them obviously in the Aviva, which makes it more daunting but way more exciting because I suppose the consequences of hitting top form and producing a season's best performance for us, which we will need, brings its own reward. So, I just see the privilege, the joy in preparing a team to try and win a European Cup final. For me, it excites me hugely. There'll be subplots, there'll be energy put in into different things, but it's going to come down to who can execute on the day.
Yeah, and this one is obviously a bit like you're alluding to, a subplot and an interesting talking point, and can become a subcontext or a lead into the game or whatever. But equally, like that ability to sort of people, again, there's an awful lot of euphemisms that are used around it, like playing the ref or whatever it might be. Is that the sort of stuff that you can practice for or be good at? Like, and I'm not talking about, because every you've said it already, every good team is doing that. Like, you're not at the races if you're not looking at ways to get a benefit over your opponent or to work with the referee you're playing with.
The strengths are very different in both teams, and the fact that you look at Furlong, Porter, Sheehan, Ryan, Doris, Conan, Van der Fleer. brilliant rugby players, but very different to Antonio, Gugarit, Wardy, Skelton, Battia, Aldridge, So
in what
you're
sense?
trying to do, just different profiles of player. In the fact that, different capacity to do things, different capacity, how they play the game. So as a coach, Leinster will be trying to set their guys up to get moments where they're very comfortable playing their game, while I'd be setting up my team to try and get us to do what we're good at, and that's playing with the ball, So, it depends on how you see it and what approach you have you're going to take to it. But there's undoubted quality on both sides, but you're hoping, like we did in the Exeter game and like Leinster did in the Toulouse game, that it's the winner was clear and evident for everyone. A lot of finals sometimes become tight, but I think what you have with these two teams is that the teams are going to fire shots, and one team will break, and the other team will go on, obviously, and win it.
It's the dark arts, essentially, Ronan, isn't it? What James Tracy is talking about there, for all intents and purposes, and it's not something that's exclusive to rugby. You get the dark arts, we spoke about it plenty of times in the show, about Gaelic games and soccer as well, and plenty of other sports. But it's one of those aspects of rugby that it's not like one team does it more than another, or is it?
Dark arts is a different subject. I think there are definitely players who are good at dark arts in terms of blocking and escorting back and kick chase. What we're talking about here is your skill set. There's nothing to do with dark arts for me. If you're a very good chop tackler and you're very good at poaching ball, which a lot of La Rochelle players are, you get rewarded. If you're inaccurate at poaching ball and sloppy in your technique, you get punished. It's very, very simple. There's no dark arts involved. There's a load of skills, the same as a kicker kicking goals. There are a lot of good goal kickers. There are a lot of goal kickers that crumble under pressure. There are a lot of players that can lose that position in a poor position because they don't have the strength to keep that position, while the guys that are able to do that and work on their technique and understand the rules and understand the laws of the game, they get rewarded. So, and there's a few freaks playing because Battia, anyone who has played against them, and Leinster players have said it to me in the past, they are incredibly impressed by this guy, and anyone who referees him says exactly the same thing after the game. So they're special players on both sides, and we've got to remember that it's a spectacle that needs to highlight, I suppose, the strengths of both teams.
You probably get used to these media narratives and, as you say, interviews that crop up in the weeks before a big match, especially the week 10 days before a massive match like this. Interviews are done on both sides, and whether people will admit it or not, the effort is there to, I guess, get some sort of advantage. But that's professional sport, isn't it? I suppose in your position you get used to that over time.
Yeah, especially because you're in the staff now, or you're the manager of the team, or as we say in France, which is the head coach in Irish lingo. But it becomes nearly it's a game that sometimes has no influence on the game, because there's 23 guys who would put on their socks and shorts and jersey and game day, and are they in control of their emotions or not? Are they in a good place? And where have they got in their headspace to perform? So all this thing is talk before the game, but sure, 80 minutes there'll be kick-off for either us or for them, and then it'll be just it'll be full on. And if you're able to adapt, if you're able to think straight, if you're able to execute your plan, that for me is the interesting thing. The build-up is a little bit obviously for fans and supporters. The
important thing is to not say too much.
Say which too much?
Like, for your position, the important thing is to not. You don't want to say anything that I'm not certainly talking about stuff that gets put up in the dressing room wall or whatever. But like,
no, I don't think you have to take that into account too. If they want to put stuff up on the wall, that's a reflection on them.
Yeah, but I mean, you don't want to be saying anything that's you have to. I suppose if I slightly reword it, do you watch your words a little bit more in the lead into a game like that?
I think you watch your words all the time. You've got to be not watch your words, but you've got to be very conscious of what you're saying is accurate and honest. Because I've worked under coaches in the past where they haven't been honest and they were picked apart by players because they were told this and that, and there's no consistency in their behaviour. What players, I think, maybe don't like, but they respect is if they're getting clear messages and consistent messaging, and it makes for stronger relationships. Stronger relationships obviously mean for a stronger group. So I think it's a fantastic opportunity for my club to go to Dublin to contest a European Cup final. It doesn't get any juicier, it doesn't get any better, and the excitement involved in that will be the dominant, I suppose, sentiment going towards kick-off time.
How much prep have you done for that already?
Very little, to be fair. For the Leinster game, but you're investing in your team all year round. You know, the goal is to get better every Saturday, and my players will be fully aware of that message coming from me. It may sound surprising, but we would put so much of the energy which you need to be into controlling our performance, because how many knock-ons do we make in the game? How many missed tackles do we make? How many kick-off receptions do we drop? That has nothing to do with Leinster. It's got to do with our skill set. So we need to make sure that we're strong at our fundamentals, and it's the same as any other week where the focus will be on us, because the beauty of coaching here is I feel that if we get ourselves right, we can beat anyone.
Are you, by the same token, are you on the Monday morning after the semi-finals turn out to Donegal or the rest of your coaching staff and saying, right, find me the place where we can target them?
Yeah, we'd obviously that is important, but it's another 5%. But if you're looking at that to be the be-all and end-all, Adrian, you're missing. I think when you become consistently good as a team, and no matter what sport it is, you're continuously building on your basics, and you're adding a layer and you're adding a layer. What you can't do is explode on a big occasion. That would mean that your values or your basics aren't strong enough to contest a final against a brilliant team like Leinster. So I think, I've the way, Leo came on, Guy came into the dressing room after last year's final, really, really classy. They were hurting. That could well be me Saturday week. That's what happens in sport, but I would be so annoyed or disappointed if I was watching a European Cup final on TV. This is where every coach in Europe wants to be. This is where you test yourself for, and it's an incredibly great opportunity.
It probably depends on the size of a coaching staff as well, but do you have the ability, I guess, Ronan, after you beat Exeter in the semi-final to set aside some staff to concentrate solely on Leinster, or is it everyone is obviously focusing on Montpellier and these other games first?
No, because Leinster are very smart. It's not as if you look at a footage of them for an hour and you go, oh yeah, I have them here. The detail is of where you can find opportunity against a team like that is very, very small. Every team has weaknesses. They'll pick out areas they'll go after us. We think we can find a few chinks with them. But you're dreaming to kind of go, well, I have 5 players here we're going to score 5 tries from, It doesn't work like that. It's about trying to put them under pressure by, I suppose, keeping hold of the ball and trying to be picking good decisions in the heat of battle.
There's obviously the opportunity to see Leinster in the heat of battle. Maybe the team doesn't bear a huge resemblance to the team they're going to play in the Champions Cup final, so maybe there won't be a huge amount in it, but we've been joined obviously by your good friend in studio here as well in the meantime. Alan Quinlan's here, and we're going to talk to him a little bit more detail about the Munster-Leinster game. What's your expectation about, or any thoughts to it at all, about the Munster-Leinster game at the Aviva tomorrow?
My opinion, is it?
Yeah.
Like some Munster, I've got 4, I suppose, high-profile injuries at the weekend, which weakens their hand, because there's, no matter who you're talking about, when quality comes out, there are certain players that are very, very difficult to replace. I haven't seen teams on either side, and it has a big impact on what, I suppose, result or performance you would expect, depending on who's playing. Aside from the injuries, Munster will be pretty loaded. But what Leinster have opposed to any other team is that they have 30 players, 40 players who can go in and keep that performance level at a really, really high level. So they're in the Aviva. They will be hot favourites to beat Munster again. But you need to see team sheets to give you an accurate call on it.
Yeah, we won't know that for a little bit. Interesting, as always.
He didn't bite anyway. Fair play to you, kids. You didn't bite. No, it's a tough one. I think being respectful to James Tracy, like this is stuff that his opinion as he's seen, and if I was talking about Munster, I'd be probably trying to highlight, and I've probably done it in commentary myself when they play the opposition. Classic example of that was last year. Went to New Zealand, first test, Ireland played the All Blacks. And they have problems around the breakdown. They highlighted next week. I was kind of vocal in some of the stuff, even on off the ball or in interviews afterwards, and it changes the following week. So this stuff can make a little bit of a difference. I think Jaco Piper's a very good referee, and I think both, and obviously Roger, you don't need to comment on this, but both coaches will have things that they see, and that's just the way the modern game goes. And us as pundits or ex-players, we kind of will say some things. I think it's probably coming from James as well, that being in that dressing room and this stuff has been highlighted, and it shows the level of detail that a team like Leinster go to, and it gets ingrained in you as well. And you even if I talk to a coach from any team, they might say something to me, and it goes into my head, and it's something, God, I didn't really notice that. James, obviously, that's his opinion as well, but both sides, and this is the kind of mind games of such a big game, will look to chat to the referees, and it does happen a lot, and you've got to be squeaky clean, and I think Roger will know this, Leo will know this, discipline is going to be really important, and getting that stuff right. Even, for example, last week, Munster Glasgow over in Glasgow, Andrea Piardi, the referee, the entry points there for both teams, he penalised both sides. So this kind of coming in from the side, and he was really sticky on that. So you need to communicate with the referee, and dare I say it, probably the dark arts. I couldn't criticise anyone for stealing a yard or two here in matches, because I probably half the time I didn't know I was offside, and referees were kind of coaching me and saying, like, come on, you're making this one a bit obvious. It's
a fair observation. James has been very good, by the way. He's been really
absolutely
good,
no, and it's not even a criticism
to the game. I know that, but I felt actually just in the general. I don't know where the it's been alluded to, obviously, about where the tone of the comments has come from, but he's been very good. Ronan, you've been way over time, so
good luck.
We'll talk to you again.
Nice weekend.
Cheers. Ronan O'Gara on the line there.